well, I'll go back. The day we started Apple Computer, IBM was far more powerful in the computer industry than Microsoft and Intel are today. The day we started Apple, because they not only controlled the technologies, they controlled the customer. They had direct contact with the customer. And so we should have just given up. I mean, Woz, was, I should have just nudged Woz, hey, forget it. We don't have a chance. But we were too stupid to know that. We hadn't gone to business school. We didn't read we didn't even know what the Wall Street Journal was. I'd never seen a Wall Street Journal. And that served us well. So, what can I say? I think every good product...
There are only two ways that businesses succeed in the very long run. One is either they are the lowest cost player in their space, or the other alternative is they build a product that people want to buy. Whereas you're either Apple or Amazon, and there's literally nothing in between. All businesses converge to one of these two models in the long run. We've chosen the second path, right? So the long-term competitive advantage for a business which wants to win in the low-cost space is to just be the most efficient by far. Your cost structure itself is a competitive advantage. See, it's impossible today for somebody to come back in and replicate our cost structure without spending twice the amount of money that we did, and to still take 2 years to do it. So we'll still be ahead. All competitive advantages over a very long run can be purchased. The point is that it's a very big barrier and nobody wants to get into this space. See, to replicate us, you would have to sink in close to about $120 million in capex to start with, and then wait for the network to catch up over the next 2 or 3 years. You'd have to train 5 years worth of employees, 15,000 people across 500 cities. That's a very big company.
What happens when a company is, let's say both of them are, company A and company B are at the same, almost the same delta. What starts happening now? When two companies are equally innovation or efficiency scoring point of view, what happens? They'll drop price. Okay, when you drop price, who won? Customers. So when two people compete, the benefits go to customer. Who else does it go to? Suppliers. If you were a monopoly, let's say you were a Tally, any supplier you will say, boss, kaam karna hai karo, warna jao. But now there are two people who are equally competing. You say, I'll not pay you enough. I'll increase my, I'll give you at a 10% margin instead of 8 that I used to make earlier, and so on and so forth. And they'll make these guys compete. What else happens? Somebody said that. What is that? Talent. A Delta 4 talent will start milking these two companies. Amazing, isn't it? That's how you will see the sentiment of placement salaries going up and down. What else? Who else takes the benefit of this? Government. How? Media companies. Whoa, this is the best. मेरा भी फुल पेज ऐड, आपका भी फुल पेज ऐड, 3 फुल पेज ऐड, 4 फुल पेज ऐड. Every time you are in the business of helping other people compete, you'll win. Which are those?
Substitutes competitors. One has to be very watchful on this. So we watch this very carefully. In fact, I am said to be paranoid about it within our own organization. So even the smallest competitor that comes on the stage, smallest competitor, like just to put in perspective, we might be doing 10,000 times more transactions than them, but we are watching even that smaller competitor in terms of what they are doing, what change they are making in the market. And if anything makes sense, anything at all makes sense, we would replicate in no time. So we're watching extremely carefully. And I think one has to do that in today's time. That's one of the strongest parts of being nimble. I know everybody sort of makes these cliched statements, don't look at competition, look at yourself and kind of grow your business and all. Competition wipes out companies within, a few years, which have been set up over a period of time. And I think people have to respond to it very, very quickly. I believe had Yahoo responded to Google when search was happening way back in 1996, they may not be where they are. They thought it would be, it wouldn't happen. So a lot of times I believe we let competition be. So our response comes very, very quickly. I'll give an example. There was somebody who was selling, when you sell two-wheelers, you make 50 rupees per transaction. So it makes no sense to sell them commercially. But what one competitor started doing was in a very, very quiet manner. They have no traffic, they have nothing, but in a very, very quiet manner, they started selling with every two-wheeler, they started selling a dengue care product, etc., on which you could make about 400-500. So what they would do is, they would basically go to two-wheeler agents, pay them, you make 10%, you pay the agent 50%, you take the product policy from the agent or pay him 30%. So the agent makes more money from you than from the insurance company. You take the product and then you attach dengue on them. And there was a very decent attachment of dengue because dengue as a product is only about half priced or about 30% of the price of a two-wheeler insurance, but it has 100% margin. So it can give you a lot of margin, right? Now, those guys paid us a big compliment. They said Policybazaar took about 7 days to respond to this. They said, we can't believe that. They said, we started it somewhere in Jalandhar, and Policybazaar responded within 7 days with an all-out offer on this, right? So I think that kind of flexibility, that kind of thing to respond, you have to always keep. We have a lot of lateral risk coming in right now. Because, see, what has not happened in our industry? Discounting has not happened in our industry. How has e-commerce been built? Largely by discounting. At least the build part, right? So our biggest fear is somebody comes in from a side and starts offering discounting in this market. Because it's fairly straightforward. If you're basically told, okay, go and do everything on policy. I don't believe anybody can, what they cannot do is provide the guidance we provide on health insurance. I, hand on heart, believe that is very, very difficult to provide. And most likely they would not be able to provide that in a feasible period of time. But what they can do is, okay, you go to Policybazaar, you search everything, just take 10% discount from me, right? That's an easy one. And we watch that part very closely. We work with regulation very closely. So that's the one fear we have. And we work on that side quite stringently.
School or who do a little bit less well on the standardized tests and don't get into the right schools. And so we always think of losers as people who can't compete. And I want us to really rethink and revalue this and consider whether it's possible that competition itself is off, that we're sort of, it's not just the case that we don't understand this monopoly competition dichotomy intellectually. So I've sort of been talking about why you wouldn't understand it intellectually, because people lie about it, it's distorted. We have all these, the history of innovation rationalizes what's happened in all these very, very strange ways. But I think it's more than just an intellectual blind spot. I think it's also a psychological blind spot where we find ourselves very, very attracted to competition in one form or another. We find it reassuring if other people do things. The word ape already in the time of Shakespeare meant both primate and imitate. And there is something about human nature that's deeply mimetic, imitative, ape-like, sheep-like, lemming-like, herd-like. And it's this very, very problematic thing that we need to always think through and try to overcome. And there is always this question about competition as a form of validation, where we go for things that lots of other people are going for. And it's not that there is wisdom in crowds. It's not when lots of people are trying to do something that's proof of it being valuable. I think it's when lots of people are trying to do something that is often proof of insanity. There are 20,000 people a year who move to Los Angeles to become movie stars. About 20 of them make it. I think the Olympics are a little bit better because you have you can sort of figure out pretty quickly whether you're good or not. So there's a little bit less of a dead weight loss to society. You're the sort of educational experience at a place, the pre-Stanford educational experience. There's always sort of a non-competitive characterization where I think most of the people in this room had machine guns and they were competing with people with bows and arrows. So it wasn't exactly a parallel competition when you were in junior high school and high school. There's always a question, does the tournament make sense as you keep going? And this is And so there is always this question, if people go on to grad school or postdoctoral educations, does the intensity of the competition really make sense? There's the classic Henry Kissinger line that describing his fellow faculty at Harvard, that the battles were so ferocious because the stakes were so small, describing sort of academia. And you sort of think on one level, this is a description of insanity. Why would people fight like crazy when the stakes are so small? But it's also, I think, simply a function of the logic of the situation. When it's really hard to differentiate yourself from other people, when the objective differences really are small, then you have to compete ferociously to maintain a difference of one sort or another that's often more imaginary than real. There's always sort of a personal version of this that I tell, where I was sort of hyper tracked. My 8th grade junior high school yearbook, one of my friends wrote in, I know you'll get into Stanford in 4 years as a sophomore. I sort of went to Stanford 4 years later, at the end of high school. Went to Stanford Law School. Ended up at a big law firm in New York, where from the outside everybody wanted to get in, on the inside everybody wanted to leave. And you had, and it was this very strange dynamic where after I sort of realized this was maybe not the best idea, and I left after 7 months and 3 days, one of the people down the hall from me told me, it's really reassuring to see you leave, Peter. I had no idea that it was possible to escape from Alcatraz, which of course, all you had to do was go out the front door and not come back. But so much of people's identities got wrapped up in winning these competitions that they somehow lost sight of what was important, what was valuable. Competition does make you better at whatever it is that you're competing on. Because when you're competing, you're comparing yourself with the people around you. You're figuring out, how do I beat the people next to me? How do I do somewhat better at whatever it is they're doing? And you will get better at that thing. I'm not questioning that. I'm not denying that. But it often comes at this tremendous price that you stop asking some bigger questions about what's truly important and truly valuable. And so I would say that don't always go through the tiny little door that everyone's trying to rush through. Maybe go around the corner and go through the vast gate that no one's taking. Thank you very much.